Greetings all, and welcome to the final segment of A Traveler's Guide to for Aether. And today we'll be concluding a look at the planet by examining the Sky Temple grounds and the temple itself. The Sky Temple grounds were a twisted mockery of the temple grounds, and were actually one of the most dangerous parts of Dark Aether, as there were a few light crystals and beacons to be found. Most of the land had been cut into chunks as a result of ingworms blocking many passages, and it was bathed in devastating storm particles in some areas, making a full exploration of the grounds impossible without the protective effects of the light suit to fight away the corrosive darkness. This area serves the holding location for 3 Sky Temple keys that are located by Luminoth key bearers Diesel, who underwent a possession attempt but self-terminated before the process was complete, MD, who was able to acquire a Sky Temple key but died before I can put it in its place, and JFM, who was overwhelmed by Darklings and rogue Luminoth robots, but whom were unable to make it back to the entrance of the Sky Temple to put them back in their proper place. As far as can be spoken on previously covered organisms, the Sky Temple grounds were once home to nearly every known member of the Ing race, though blade pods were more numerous than other storage Ing at the very least. Now, let's take a look at some of the more unique creatures that could be found within the Sky Temple grounds, though keep in mind that some could be seen elsewhere in Dark Aether in rare cases. The Flying Ing Cache was a flying storage unit used by the Ing that are biologically and mentally designed to grow around objects of importance and then use their bodies to protect them. Unlike other lowly storage creatures, however, these entities are able to hide themselves from view using a cloaking field, making them effectively invisible to the naked eye and only observable through dark visor technology. Moreover, they tended to hide in places where most creatures were never able to reach or find them, which may explain why they're used exclusively to store the keys to the Sky Temple on Dark Aether. For reasons that are still unknown, Ing claws would occasionally enter a strange torpor brought on by constant exposure to the atmosphere of Dark Aether and would become mentally and physically dormant, essentially going into hibernation stasis, also possibly due to excessive exposure to Ing storm particles. In this state, the creatures did not feed or expel the deadly vapor and thus had no way to defend themselves, but their shells were still indestructible against most predators and were thus still safe from direct attack. Even so, the state rendered them a complete non-threat to others and little more than wall decoration for any explorers. The corrupted Sentry Eye was originally used by Luminoth as a fixed security system to protect their camps on Dark Aether, but as with many of the machines and creatures that Luminoth brought into existence during the war with the Ing, this was not to last forever. It was not long after they made these scars of the Ing learned how to corrupt and override their programming, turning them against their creators and making them security systems for the needs and whims of the Ing and the Ing alone. The corrupted Sentry Eye was plugged into an unmovable energy storage pillar and consisted of little more than a metal shell with a single semi-mobile red eye in the center, attached to a focusing beacon that could focus light energy into a deadly laser that would hurt anything that got in their way. They seemed to only move this beam back and forth along a set path in most cases, but for reasons that are yet to be determined, they seem to have an extreme hatred for anything in morph ball form and actively train their lasers on such targets with extreme prejudice. The corrupted Sentry Eye could certainly be a bit of a pain to avoid, but it is known that the delicate sensors were weak to bright light and they could thus be temporarily deactivated by firing any type of beam weapon at them, and the durable metallic shells used to cover themselves when not active could be completely destroyed with a charged beam shot. As such, basic weapon fire could be more than enough to keep them at bay as long as one knew the right way to shut them down, and turn securing them in place within threat level alpha. Lastly, we can now finally examine the last major location of the Hunter's journey to save Aether, the Sky Temple. The Sky Temple, once inaccessible to even the Luminoth key bearers tasked with finding the keys to the structure, served as the final stop of the Hunter's exploration of Dark Aether and is believed to have been formed from the remains of the Leviathan that caused the creation of Dark Aether in the first place. This temple served no other purpose other than being the nesting grounds of the Emperor Ing, and in turn the planetary energy counterpart of the Great Temple, which the Hunter had to battle over multiple mutations with incredible powers before she was able to destroy it to reclaim the last of Aether's planetary energy, causing the Dark Dimension to collapse in on itself and cease to exist entirely. And now, we will cover the final 2 entities that the Hunter had to fight against in her battle against the Ing race. Though the Ing horde was vast and had more than enough monsters at its disposal to work with, no member of the horde came close to approaching the power of the Alpha and the Omega of the group, the entity the Hunter was forced to fight and destroy in order to retrieve the last bits of planetary energy from Dark Aether, the Emperor Ing. This monster was the first true Ing created by the formation of Dark Aether, and had been feeding on the power of the Sky Temple's planetary energy greedily even after being mutated by constant exposure to Phazon, transforming it into a creature that dwarfed the power of the rest of the Ing horde. In its base form, the Emperor Ing consisted of several different parts, all of which had their own special role in keeping it a single cohesive entity. The body of the creature essentially served as the main structure supporting the head and eye of the beast, giving it the look of an overgrown inglet. As with its brethren, the Emperor Ing was a metamorph, and had taken to building its bodily frame around the Sky Temple's energy controller in order to protect it and use its power indefinitely, generating a series of large tentacles from its head in order to attack the hunter. In close quarters, the Emperor Ing was able to rotate its entire head to swing its tentacles across the ground to trip up its opponents, as well as to simply pound them into the ground below to smash the hunter if she got too close. In terms of projectile attacks, the creature could use its limbs to create a massive ball of dark energy that would then forcefully throw into the ground, causing a massive explosion and minor shockwave in the process, as well as create mini portals from each of its tentacles, covered in light energy strangely enough, and stick them through the portals to try and stab the hunter from all angles. Despite their power though, the hunter was able to target his tentacles to destroy them, and upon eliminating all the tentacles the beast had out, the creature was forced to expose its main eye while repair the damage done to its shield body. The eye of the beast itself, which is nothing more than a giant pale orange ball of sentry cells, served as his main weak point, but was protected by a twin series of energy shields, and could fire a powerful laser that could disrupt the hunter's aim and render her weapons inoperable for a short period of time. Dealing damage was not easy, as the shields around the eye protected it from attack almost completely, but there was a small slit on either side that could be fired through to target the eye directly. The hunter had to repeat this process several times as the beast's outer shell continued to regenerate, with more tentacles being created as the beast's health was depleted, but she was finally able to deal enough critical damage to destroy the beast. Or at least, so she thought. Shortly after taking critical damage, however, the Emperor Ing's head flipped over and covered its body entirely, spraying dark gas throughout it as it did so. When the gas cleared up a bit, the hunter could see that its head had grown in size and hardened, entering a chrysalis-like state with a shell that seemed to be impervious to all forms of direct attack. The monster had entered this cocoon in order to regenerate itself, and the only way the hunter was going to get it out before it fully recovered was to destroy the shell. Her suit detected that the surface of the chrysalis was highly magnetized and possessed 11 points of weakness across its form that could be destroyed with concussive force. As such, she entered Morph Ball form and clung to the shell using her Spider Ball upgrade, laying down Morph Ball bombs near these yellow glowing weak points. It was a bit more dangerous than she initially thought though, as darkling tentacles would often lash out from these points and try to batter away, their appearance telegraphed by a spurt of dark energy bubbles from the weak points, but this was not to their favor, as their destruction would lead to the breakage of the associated weak point. In addition, Inglets would constantly appear to support the leader and proved to be a nuisance, but they would also drop energy weapon ammunition to help the hunter restore reserves after the first part of the fight with the Emperor. With the dark corrosive gas rising up and down as the battle raged on, and nearly blinding her on more than one occasion, the hunter was finally able to break the 11 weak points to crack open the shell of the Emperor Ing to reveal the monster once again. However, once more, the monster that emerged was not the same Emperor Ing. Mutated by further exposure to phazon energy, the Emperor Ing had taken on the form of a massive warrior Ing, possessing the same exact body form, but with 3 central horns on its head and, instead of sensory cells, its very heart revealed within its head with only a few strands of organic matter holding the top and bottom halves of its head together at the hole, though the hole could be opening closed like a mouth to protect the heart against damage. The energy core that served as the heart of the beast had become extremely unstable and had effectively fused with the energy controller, granting the monster an incredible amount of power and a swath of new attacks more than lethal against anything other than the hunter. Physically, the creature was beyond imposing and could use a number of melee strikes to try and destroy the hunter. If she got too close to the monster, it would try to skewer her with its 3 front legs while covered in dark energy, and would periodically try to rush her and stomp furiously on her, preceded by a vicious roar or a stomp around a bit before lowering its head and dashing straight towards her in an attempt to deliver a full-body tackle. This attack in particular could actually make the creature more vulnerable to attack, as there was a small hole in the back of the monster's head that could be targeted and hit its heart directly. In its normal state, the creature could also crouch and jump into the air to generate massive shockwaves upon hitting the ground, and fire an enormous series of lasers made from dimensional energy, just like a normal warrior Ing. The other attacks it had to work with were dependent upon the color of its heart at any given time. Under normal circumstances, the creature's heart, which is nothing more than a giant orb of light at this point, was an orange color as a result of an energy barrier covering the heart, and was only really vulnerable to attacks from the power beam and annihilator beams, and any beam combo attacks associated with them. Damage dealt to the heart in this state would not actually count as true damage, instead merely destabilizing the energy shield that was put in place for protection. Instead, dealing enough damage to the heart in the state would force the monster to close its own maw as the energy shield faded, changing its color to either white or purple as the heart of the beast was fully exposed. While the heart was in this unprotected state, weapons of the opposite polarity could be used to attack and deal direct damage to it, with it acting as both a monster of the light and darkness rolled into one. If the heart was energized by light energy and possessed a bright white color, the Emperor Ing would fire a laser from his central horns that could deal both incredible damage and set the hunter on fire, dealing continuous damage for a short period of time before the flames wore off. In addition, the monster would occasionally summon a unique relative to the Night Barb called the Light Swarm, and if the hunter did not disperse the creatures with sustained fire, the Emperor Ing could swallow them and recover a bit of its health in the process. If the heart of the Emperor Ing was energized by dark energy and color purple on the other hand, it could fire a beam of dark energy from its horns that both severely damaged the hunter and freeze her in place for a few moments. In addition, the monster would occasionally summon a swarm of night barbs for protection from dark puddles on the ground generated by its foremost leg, and if they were not dispersed like the light swarm, they too could easily be eaten by the Emperor Ring to recover some of its energy. As the hunter continued to damage the creature, the light given off by its heart continued to grow and grow in brightness until it was practically a beacon of light shining right through its makeshift mouth, its behavior growing increasingly erratic and frenzied and making it extremely difficult to damage. After one of the most heated battles of her life, however, the hunter was able to over-energize the monster's heart and cause it to exceed critical stability completely, resulting in the monster dropping dead and detonating in a massive shower of dark energy. The tale of Dark Aether and its denizens that once inhabited is one of great struggle, loss, destruction, and yet light and hope. Even in the darkest of days, the Luminoth and their prayers were answered when the hunter came to their aid, but even after all she had done to restore the light world fully, this mutated behemoth of an Ing proved to be a severe challenge that she may not have been totally prepared for, but ultimately managed to subdue and destroy. Even so, the immense power this monster wielded and used to the utmost was far beyond anything that most could be capable of, and for that it can only be assigned to a threat level of, let's go with, the darkness that swallowed the sun. A fitting title, wouldn't you agree? After the hunter destroyed the Emperor Ring and still lost the power from the energy controllers, it caused a planet-wide dimensional destabilization. Without any energy in the energy controllers in the Dark World, there is nothing left to keep Dark Aether stable, and the world subsequently began to enter the final stages of complete dimensional implosion. The hunter made it out of the Sky Temple intended to travel back to the Light World, but a pathway both to and away from the Sky Temple was halted when a giant wall of face-on covered the exit and surrounded the open area she was standing in. As she turned to see what was responsible for this, she came face to face with an abomination long thought to be gone. It seemed that Dark Samus, once again, had not really died but merely dispersed, reforming sometime later and absorbing even greater amounts of face-on in her body. But Dark Samus had made a serious mistake. She had absorbed too much energy too quickly, and her now translucent body, revealing her fake heart, blood vessels, bones, and 3 eyes, was at the point of no return. In this state, Dark Samus became completely invisible to even the Dark Visor, only being visible in some cases with the Echo Visor, and while she still retained the ability to generate energy shields to protect herself from damage, she used this move sparingly, instead choosing to hover high into the air and blast the hunter with massive beams of pure face-on radiation. As she continued to take damage, however, her body grew increasingly unstable and eventually rendered her a being of pure face-on, a state of existence that rendered her all but invincible against direct attack. Dark Samus started to fire homing blasts of face-on energy, as well as rains of minor face-on pellets in order to keep her body from overloading itself, perhaps unknowing or at least uncaring of the fact that the world around them was crumbling. The hunter was able to use her charge beam to absorb the face-on pellets she released, and infuse them with her charge beam, firing massive bursts of face-on energy that heavily damaged and destabilized Dark Samus' form. Just as the countdown timer of the Dark World climbed towards the final moments of the 8 minutes she started with, Dark Samus succumbed to her injuries, her body on the brink of complete and total atomic dispersion. As her body began to fade away, she slowly approached the hunter and raised her free hand up towards her. Dark Samus wanted the light suit the hunter had been gifted, as she thought that the suit would contain the rest of the DNA so Dark Samus could be made whole just like her and not die the death of a semi-living entity. But she failed, and vanished in a haze of face-on particles, allowing the hunter to escape from the collapsing Dark World. Though this final confrontation on Dark Aether might have been brief, it is clear that Dark Samus elevated herself to a level of power that only the hunter could have ever been equipped to handle. And while this would only be a start to the dark legacy she would eventually carve for herself in the future, she more than deserves a place within threat level Epsilon here, a worthy final fight for the hunter's last stand on Dark Aether. The many different lands that once occupied Dark Aether were all treacherous in their own ways, but there truly was no more of a hostile environment than the Sky Temple grounds and the Sky Temple itself. While the creatures that dwelled in this darkness might have been of a vanilla kind compared to some of the more exotic creatures that could be found elsewhere, what they lacked in variety was more than made up for with power and numbers. Not only that, but the almost total absence of light crystals and beacons meant that having to traverse it would be an impossible task without the power of the light suit or anything similar, for the toxic darkness of the land would swallow whole anyone that would dare to enter it unprepared. And to that end, the sheer danger of the Sky Temple itself could not be understated, for it was the home of the most powerful of the entire Ing race, and the first to be born of Dark Aether. For these reasons, this land is best assigned a placement within threat level Delta, and it is a comforting thought to know that this land no longer exists, and for the sake of the Luminoth, it is hoped that it never will again. And now, here we finally are. I thank everyone that has been patient and curious enough to look through the entries here for a traveler's guide to Aether. It was admittedly a little hard to get a lot of information for this series, but even a good soldier can be bought for the right price. Or so I have been told by Science Team. Our next stop will involve us visiting not just one planet, but several in truth, as we'll be taking a look at the worlds and forces that were affected by the Phazon crisis, and delving into the ending of the crisis in its entirety. Thank you for reaching the end of this presentation. While we might not always get along, the space pirates and myself, in whatever capacity we can manage, are dedicated to analyzing and examining the life forms of many different worlds, extant and extinct, to show the great variety of life that exists out within the greater cosmos. If you enjoyed this info video or would like to see more, please like, comment, and subscribe for more information. We'll do our best to keep pumping out data so the greater public has an understanding of what to expect when exploring alien planets and their denizens. With that, have a safe journey, and have your bribes prepared beforehand if you happen to come near our territory.